Hey, I'm super excited. I've got some big news to share with you all tonight. Every time we have these area-wides, they're split up really into two categories. You have the school year area-wides and you have the summer area-wides. And before each of those happen, all the youth ministers gather together and they plan out the theme for the upcoming either school year or summer area-wide session. Well, we did that last month, and we talked about what that theme was going to be, and I have the blessing of being able to announce that to you tonight, but I kind of want to tease it a little bit. So there's a person right now that's incredibly influential in our society. This person, I've noticed you either really like them or you really don't like them. This person recently, some would say, has put someone else that's popular on the map, while others would say this person has put that person on the map. And this person has a particular tour right now that is pretty big time. All you Swifties are literally drooling. Yes, we're talking about Taylor Swift, and she's on a tour right now called what? The Eras Tour, right? So we decided to play off that theme a little bit, and so this summer, for the summer area-wides, we will be looking at this idea of the Errors Tour. And so what we're going to be doing is looking through some of the mistakes that people in the Bible have made and learning from those mistakes so we don't fall into the same trap that they did. So I'm super excited about that. Jess Florence, are you here? Will you raise your hand? Jess? Is Jess? Attaboy, Jess. He designed that. Doesn't that look so good? That looks so good. So thank you, Jess, for doing that. So I'm super excited about that. That'll start this summer. But tonight, we're going to be continuing through our theme. Wow, that got really dark quick, didn't it? Sadness. Tonight, we're going to be continuing our theme that we've been going over for the school year called All the Feels. And throughout this study, we've been looking at the different emotions that we encounter and we experience in this life and how to work through them, how to navigate our life through those different emotions that we feel. And tonight we're going to continue that, and we're going to look at the emotion of sadness. And I want to share this quote with you that I think ties in incredibly well with the overall theme and especially the topic that we had tonight. And the quote says this: God created us emotional beings. To feel is to be human. And to minimize or to deny what we're feeling is a distortion of being made in the image of God. And to the degree that you're unable or unwilling to express your emotions, you will remain impaired in your ability to love God and to love others. And I thought that was incredibly appropriate and accurate. And going off of that, and I promise we'll come back to that idea, I want to share with you the story of my second car. Now, usually people are in love with their first car and tell stories about them and their memories with the first car. Well, my first car was short-lived. I got into a wreck very shortly after getting my first car, and it went by. But my second car was a 2007 Saturn Aura. And if you're going, I've never heard of that, there's probably a reason you've never heard of a Saturn Aura. It was a piece of junk, but it was my piece of junk, and I loved it. And if you drive a Saturn Aura, I'm really sorry. You have a really nice car. But this Saturn Aura, it was the car that I drove everywhere. Throughout high school, I drove it all the time. I went and picked my friends up. I went out of my way, spent way too much gas money driving this thing. It was the car that I took with me all the way out to Denver, Colorado to go to school at Bear Valley. That's a plug. And to come back. So it went back and forth. And remember, a piece of junk. They told us when we were buying the car, hey, this car isn't a car that you're going to have for a long period of your life. And at that time, I didn't care. I just wanted to get a car. Well, they lived up to what they said about the car. And pretty much every month, my car dash started to look like a Christmas tree. Do you know what I mean by that? These warning lights started appearing. They started appearing, and more kept adding. And it got to the point where when I was in Colorado, my buddy Carl asked me if he could borrow my car and drive it to 7-Eleven to get some snacks. And the reason he needed to drive my car was because he drove a moped around Denver, Colorado, and it was raining outside. So I said, yeah, man, you can take my car. He took it to 7-Eleven and came back, and he said, hey, by the way, I'm not giving you your keys back. And I was like, I thought he was kidding with me, but he was like, no, seriously, You are a liability on the road driving this thing. We are going to the mechanics and getting it taken care of right now. This is horrible. And me, I'm a broke college kid, so I'm like, whatever. And I think really when those warning lights start popping up on your car dash, there's two types of people. There's one group of people that take care of it right away, and they take it to the mechanics, they address it, they get it fixed so it goes away and they can go about their life. There's another type of people, group number two, that they see the lights and they ignore them, and so they just keep driving the car until the car literally catches on fire or you can't drive it anymore. And I share that illustration with you because I think we treat our emotions a lot like the second part of that illustration. I think we have a very difficult time dealing with and not ignoring our emotions, especially this emotion of sadness. But the truth is we need to deal with it. We need to deal with our emotions. We need to address our emotions because I believe that our emotions affect every area of our life. And as people who desire to be spiritually healthy and spiritually nourished, it's really hard for us to be spiritually healthy when we're emotionally unhealthy. And so I think a question that's fair for us to ask is, why does God allow us to experience sadness? Why is why is the emotion of sadness one that we feel often that God allows us to feel? Wouldn't life be better if we were just happy all the time? Well, what I want us to walk through together this evening is that when I open my Bible and read throughout it, in particular planning for this lesson, I found that sadness has a couple of different purposes in our life if we learn to handle this emotion appropriately. And so tonight, I just want to share with you three purposes that I think sadness can have in our life if we decide to deal with it appropriately. Number one is this. Sadness is like a warning light on your dash that pops up. Don't ignore it. Just like you shouldn't ignore the warning lights that pop up on your dash, you shouldn't ignore this emotion of sadness. Now, I want us to establish this truth because I can confidently say that every single person in this room, at some point in your life, you have felt this emotion of sadness before. So here's what I want you to know. You are not flawed or messed up because you have and feel emotions. You are not any less of a Christian if you experience sadness more often than you don't experience this emotion. Having and feeling emotions are not the problem. It's about our response to the emotions. See, just like the warning sign that pops up on your car, that's not the problem. It's our response to that warning light is what's crucial. See, God has given us the capacity to feel deeply. And when I open my Bible, I notice that the Bible is full of moments that show people who have experienced this emotion of sadness. I think about Job, right? Job lost everything. And a part of Job's story is about him crying out to God because of all of the things that he's gone through. Many of the Psalms, 2/3 of the Psalms are about sadness and lament and sorrow. And a lot of these come from the mouth of King David. Elijah was a man who spoke for God, a prophet of God. And the Bible says in 1 Kings chapter 19 that he got so sad that he prayed to God and asked God to take his life from him. We know Jesus himself, the Son of God, experiences sadness and hurt in his life. The shortest verse in the Bible, John 11:35, 2 words, Jesus wept. And it's just 2 words, but in those 2 words, it communicates a lot to us about who Jesus is and how he was human, just like you and just like me. Now, within this context of Jesus weeping, he's gone to see his friend Lazarus, and Lazarus has just died. And when he gets there, Lazarus' sisters are mourning and crying. And Jesus sees their pain, and the Bible says he's moved by that, and it says that he weeps. And I know this is just kind of a side note to our bigger point here, but I want us to take this away. Jesus sees you and your sadness. He saw Job when he was sitting there in the ashes after he lost everything. He saw David in his palace. He saw Elijah in the cave. He saw Lazarus' sister as they were mourning the loss of their brother, and Jesus sees you in your sadness, and he sees you in your pain. And I want us to understand that our sadness is a critical part of our faith journey. It's not something that we should ignore. I don't know if you know this or not, but our emotions don't have to be at war with our faith. They can actually grow our faith. Jesus tells his disciples in John chapter 16, verse 33, as he is comforting them as to what's about to happen to him in his life, and he says, I have said these things to you that in me you may have peace. In the world, notice this, you will have tribulations. You will have sorrow. You will experience moments of sadness, if we can plug into that. But take heart, because I have overcome the world. We are going to have moments of sadness. We are going to go through trials. We are going to experience sorrow. But look at this verse. We can have peace. Because our peace is not found in our circumstances. Our peace is found in Jesus. And our sadness, what we often do in our sadness is we let that be the thing that leads us far away from Jesus, and we run away from Jesus. But shouldn't it be that our very sadness is the thing that draws us into Jesus? Our sadness is a warning that something is going on within our heart, that we need to take notice of that, and we need to lean into Jesus. See, sadness is a part of our lives. And I find it fascinating that as you read throughout the scriptures, you actually find that there are appropriate times to be sad. The writer of Ecclesiastes says in Ecclesiastes 3:4, there's a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. Now, I want you to notice, if you look in your Bibles, your text might say time, or your text might say season, but notice it doesn't say there is a long time for sadness, or there's a long season of sadness. Notice it's for a short time. And so I think the implication of that is these are things that we need to be able to work through. See, it's appropriate when a loved one dies to experience sadness. It's appropriate when you have a goal in life and it falls through to be sad. It's appropriate when your relationship with someone is broken. It's appropriate when you've lost a job or something falls through to be sad. There are moments in life where it's appropriate for us to experience this emotion. I would argue that it's actually unhealthy if we don't ever experience this emotion of sadness. But here's what I want you to know. Number one, don't ignore your sadness when you experience it. Purpose number two I want us to take away from sadness is this. Sadness is a teacher. We should learn from it. Sadness teaches us something about who we are and what matters to us. You know, when I think about sadness, sadness is a crazy emotion. Have you ever just been sitting there and you just started crying for no reason? I'm going to share something that I think is funny, and again, it's not funny, but it's funny. My wife's been pregnant 2 times, and there will be days where we're just having the best days of our life, and I'll look over at her and she's just sobbing for just no reason. Babe, why are you crying? I don't know. I just needed to cry. Have you ever been there before? You just needed to cry. You just needed to let it all out. You know, sometimes we can just be so overwhelmed by things in life that we just need a good cry and we don't even know why. But more often than not, what I think sadness teaches us is that it teaches us about love. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 13 and 14, Paul is addressing the Thessalonians, and there has been some sort of death or something going on where he felt the need to address the Christians there about this idea of death. And he says this to them, "But we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers, about those who are asleep, that you may not grieve as others who do not have hope. For since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, through Jesus, God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep." So I understand that there are people that you have loved and they've died, but you can have hope that you will see them again. When Jesus comes back, he's going to bring them back. I understand why you're sad. It's appropriate for you to be sad right now. And I think what he's sharing with us is sadness shows us who we've loved. You know, have you ever been at the funeral of someone that you didn't really know before? That funeral is sad to you, but there's not this personal connection. And so, like, you're not really feeling this deep, heartfelt emotion of sadness. But have you ever been at the funeral of someone who you really loved? You really cared for? That hits different. You know why? Because sadness exposes to us what we care about and who we love. But I think sadness also teaches us this. It teaches us that this place is not our home. In Romans chapter 8, verses 22 and 23, Paul says this, "For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies." See, right now in our current circumstances, sadness and pain is something that we will experience. But Paul says, but one day, there will be no more sorrow. There will be no more pain. And our sadness that we feel here in this life reminds us that we're not there yet, but it's coming. And I know we don't think about it like this, but sadness may be one of the greatest gifts for which we can thank God for the life to come. Because in our sadness and in our suffering and in our lament, we can experience the joy of knowing that God is loving and His mercy is so deep for us that He has gone to prepare a place for us where we won't ever have to feel this ever again. And so sadness teaches us some things, and we need to allow our sadness to be like a compass that points us back to what's important and to lean on Jesus so that we can get through our sadness. And the third and final purpose I want to share with you about sadness is this. Sadness is a heavy emotion, so share it. I find it interesting in moments of my life when I've been sad, it's really hard to be overcome with sadness when I decided to share that with someone. And I think Jesus actually models this for us perfectly in Matthew chapter 26. In verses 36 through 38, Jesus is getting ready to go to the Garden of Gethsemane. And the text says this, "Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and He said to His disciples, 'Sit here while I go over there and pray.' And taking with Him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, He began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then He said to them, 'My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me.'" And I think we can take two things away from Jesus and what He did in this moment of His sadness. Number one is this. He shared it. He shared His sadness with His disciples. He brought them into His sadness, and He shared with them what He was experiencing. I am about to die, and I'm conflicted, so please pray for me. But notice the second thing that Jesus does. He goes to the Father and shares what He's going through with His Father. And I think a wonderful truth that we need to take away from this is we need God and we need each other. And that's throughout all of life, especially in our sadness. We need God and we need each other. You shouldn't walk through your sadness alone. You know, a couple chapters before this happens, Jesus invites us into having a relationship with Him, and He invites us to invite Him into our situations and into our sadness. He says this in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." For some of you here tonight, this is exactly what you need. Maybe you've been battling with sadness and you've not invited Jesus into your situation, and so you have no peace, you have no hope, and you have no rest. And Jesus says to you, invite me, bring me in, let me in to your sadness. In another verse in the New Testament, Peter would say, I want you to cast all your anxieties on Him, for He cares for you. You cannot do life alone. And when you're down, you need someone to pick you up. It's the most healthy thing that you can do. And I want to tell you this, there is not a better person that you could ever invite into your sadness than Jesus Christ. And when we stop denying and minimizing, and we actually start talking to people and start talking to our Father, I think we'll be amazed that we begin to get healthy. But I want us to understand that we shouldn't do it by ourselves. Sadness teaches us that we need God and we need others. And the journey towards hope, the journey towards healing, often begins by just taking one step. And for some of you, that one step that you need to take tonight is stepping towards Jesus and inviting him into your situation by calling on him to rescue you and to make him the Lord of your life. For others, maybe you've already done that. And so now you're thinking through, why am I sad? What is this sadness teaching me? What is it showing me about what's important in my life? Who do I need to talk to about this so I don't stay in this long, drawn-out season of sadness? Maybe a step for you tonight is reading the Psalms of Lament and saying, what was it that David was feeling, and what did God do in that? What did God show him that helped him get out of those situations? Because our sadness is caused by different things. So God often uses different things to bring us out of that sadness. Think about for Elijah. He was overwhelmed, and he was dehydrated, and he was hungry. What did God do? He provided nourishment for him. And that gave him the strength that he needed to continue. For David, it was that he was deeply rooted in sin. And for David, it was confessing his sin and God pulling him out of that sadness. For Jonah, it was repenting, and instead of running away from God, it was running to and with God. I don't know what you need tonight. Maybe you need to talk to someone who is emotionally and spiritually healthy to help you work through your sadness so you can be emotionally healthy, so that you can be spiritually healthy. We're about to sing a song of invitation, and the words of these songs, I think, I really want to emphasize and want you to think about. Oftentimes I think we think, I have to really collect myself before I come to Jesus. I have to have it all together. I have to make sure everything's in order. But the words of the song we're about to sing are this: I come broken. I come wounded. I come desperate. I come empty. And that's exactly what qualifies you to come to Jesus. And so tonight, if you need to come to Jesus and invite him into your life, making him the Lord of your life by putting him on in baptism, there would not be a better thing that we could do tonight other than eat some Chicken Express after. That would just make it even better. But maybe tonight you simply need some encouragement, or you need some prayers. Maybe you just simply need a hug. If there's anything that we can do for you tonight, let's take care of that if you want to come forward while together we stand and sing this song.